If you have any interest in learning how to be a better sniper, this video is for you. I interviewed my friend Shadow, who's one of the most talented snipers I know in all of Destiny 2, and I got him to share all of his best sniping tips. The background gameplay alone is basically a 45-minute montage of him dominating in PvP with a sniper. We talked about a variety of topics that can help you step up your sniping game. This includes things like how to move better as a sniper, perfecting your crosshair placement, aiming tips, gear and mod selection, and so much more. This one was particularly interesting to me because I play mostly mouse and keyboard while Shadow plays controller. So we had a discussion about some of the pros and cons of each input method, and we gave some tips to help you out regardless of which device you prefer to use. I had a great time recording this discussion and I hope you really enjoy it. I'd really appreciate it if you take a second after watching this video to go check out Shadow's YouTube channel and subscribe if you haven't done so already. He's been working really hard to grow his channel lately, and in fact he just won the Bungie Movie of the Week award with his CloudStrike montage that you may have seen in this week's This Week at Bungie update. That's all for now, hope you enjoy the video. Today I'm here with my buddy Shadow, who I play a lot of Trials of Osiris with on the weekends if you happen to catch any of my streams. Shadow is an incredibly good sniper, so good so that many of my friends thought he was kind of sus when I first started playing with him. He hits a lot of headshots with his sniper. So I thought it'd be a cool opportunity to actually get together and talk one-on-one about sniping, give a bunch of tips for both controller players and mouse and keyboard players. This is kind of interesting because I mostly play mouse and keyboard and Shadow plays controller, so you got to give some different perspectives on the various input methods and what makes each one, have certain advantages and disadvantages in different situations, and also just kind of give some tips to improve regardless of what your input device of choice is. And then also I just want to give a bunch of tips for random things that we hear question-wise all the time about, how do you get better at sniping? How do you get more consistent? How do you hit more of your shots? How do you snipe better in 3v3, 6v6 trials, competitive scrims, etc. So I think we can just kind of talk about a whole bunch of these different topics. So first of all, Shadow, I'll introduce you, and I'd love to get just a little background from you. Like, what games did you play before Destiny, and like, what have you always been sort of a sniper player, or did you kind of pick that up while you got into Destiny?
Yeah, sniping's definitely something that I've always been doing. When it comes to Destiny, I didn't play an FPS prior to Destiny 1, like seriously. So Destiny 1 was like, I started in like year 2, and that was like my first FPS that I actually took seriously. Um, so yeah, I always saw like the montages and stuff and like the clips and like YouTubers and stuff way back in the day. So I guess that was what inspired me to get into sniping, and I've basically stuck with it ever since.
Yeah, awesome. That's kind of similar. I played a bunch of like Halo and Counter Strike back in the day, but I was always drawn to the sniper. And when any game I play, I like, you put me in Battlefield or in Destiny, Counter Strike, Halo, whatever. I'm gonna pick a sniper up at some point. So
Yeah, I
um,
just feel like there's this total like sense of power that you get just from like being able to kill anyone in one shot from any range. It's just like it's
yeah,
so unique. Like nothing else can do that. So
absolutely, it's incredibly powerful. So it's always my favorite highlights whenever I used to watch like montages and frag movies and stuff like that, is to watch people with the sniper make some incredible plays. So I think that the first place to start would maybe be covering just some basic mistakes that we see a lot of players making when they try to snipe. I have a couple in mind, and we can kind of go off of that based on what comes to your mind. So the first mistake that I see people doing wrong all of the time when I watch, videos of people trying to snipe and they send me their clips to like try to improve, is always their crosshair placement. Some people call that centering as well, if you're more of like a controller console background, but for mouse and keyboard players, it's kind of more known as crosshair placement. And the whole idea of that basically is that when you're going to go for a snipe, if your crosshair is out in the middle of nowhere, like maybe you're looking at the ground, you're looking at the ceiling, kind of just out without, I don't know, kind of out in the middle of nowhere without paying a lot of attention to where it's at, it makes your job as a sniper much harder because you have to actually make a huge adjustment to flick over to where the person actually enters your screen. Whereas if you have really clean crosshair placement, all you have to do is hold it exactly at the area where someone will either slide out, run out, walk out, jump out onto your screen, and then you just click the button, or maybe make a very slight adjustment and then click the button and you get a kill. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I totally agree. I feel like crosshair placement is like the number one thing that like I always see people doing, or like doing wrong. You know, like if they're aiming at the ground or aiming at the sky. But I mean, it also, I mean, that matters both when you're aiming down sights and when you're also just running around the map. Like when you're sprinting in Destiny, there's this like little like carrot shaped thing in the middle of your screen, and like that's where your crosshair is going to be when you ADS. So like when I'm running around the map, I always like make sure that like that is like somewhere near where a player's head level would be if they were to peek out from the corner. And another thing to consider with crosshair placement is that you have to like figure out like who you're playing against. Like it doesn't apply as much in 6v6, but if you're playing like trials or 3v3s, and you know that there's this player who always slides around the corner, it's really easy to just like place your crosshair a little bit lower. So if they slide out, it's like really easy to just snap to their head. But if you're playing a player who always jumps and like flies around the corner, you might want to aim a little bit higher so that you can just get that split second reaction time onto their head. And just it makes like it might seem like a small adjustment, but like it makes a ton of difference when it just comes down to raw reaction time and getting that shot before they do.
Yeah, that's actually such good advice. So one thing I wanted to also mention about that is that when people do hold like a particular angle like that, another mistake that I see people do often is that they will try to hold the angle. In fact, here, let's demo this real quick for people. I think this would be better. So can you go over to that box over, or to the end of the wall over there? And I'll just
Hmm.
show. So a lot of times people will hold this angle, like if he's going to come out like exactly at the corner so that you have like no time to react to actually hit a shot, which I think like makes sense because people think, oh, you hear advice like that, like, oh, hold the angle where someone's going to come from or whatever. So like the natural instinct is like to, just to hold like the perfect angle. But what people don't realize is that humans have roughly like, let's say, a 200 millisecond reaction speed depending on how quick you are. Some people are faster, but either way, there's going to be a little bit of a delay from when you see that person to you actually click. So if you hold your crosshair like a little further out, like, can you run back and forth a little bit just to demo this? So if I could like hold it right here, there's basically no chance that I'm going to hit this shot right when you run by, because I have to like be ready to hit that. Whereas if I hold like a little further out, my chances of actually hitting that shot are like so much higher, especially if someone's sliding or they're moving much faster. Like if I hold a little bit further out from the angle like that, my chances of hitting that shot are tremendously higher as opposed to just holding it like very, very close to a particular angle.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And like the only situation where it would be good to put it right next to like the cover is if they're just like slow peaking. And some people think
Hmm.
that's a good idea. And I mean, in some situations it can be, but most of the time, if you're coming out like ridiculously slow, like the opponent can like see like part of your gun peeking out, like especially if you're wearing like a rocket launcher on your back, it'll like stick out around the corner. And if you slow peek, it just tells your opponent, oh, hey, here I come, get ready to shoot. So
It's a
yeah.
pretty good indicator that you're about to come around the corner. I have
Exactly.
some videos I'll link in the description of this that talk about things like that, like angle management and like holding close or far from corners, and how the actual mechanics of FPS games tend to give you an advantage in situations. But that's like a super good point to bring up too. That it's like you want to be mindful of like what your opponent is actually doing in that situation. Cool. So, what other mistakes come to mind when you think of newer players trying to improve their sniper game?
I'd say like playing out in the open. As a sniper, you always want to be like right next to cover so that you can take your shot and get away. Because like sniper, it's like it's all or nothing. You either hit your shot or you miss. Worst case scenario, you like hit a body shot and then you follow it up with another body shot. But the key point is that if you don't have enough time to follow it up with another body shot because you're dying to a primary, you need to be able to get out of there ASAP. If you're just like way out in the middle of nowhere and you miss your shot and you get flinched by literally any primary, you're definitely going to lose. Like your chance of hitting a headshot after you miss is ridiculously low. If your opponent has any type of aim that's like anywhere close
Yeah.
to being good. So I'd say just like a mistake I see people do is just not playing correctly with cover. So
Mhm.
you always want to be able to duck out of an engagement. And something that I always think of is like, if I miss this shot or if I get pushed, how am I getting out of here? So I'd say just like being able to keep your distance and being able to escape if things go, inevitably wrong, which they do, even for the best of us, you don't
Yeah.
hit every shot. So you need to
Exactly.
be able to survive.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Another thing related to that is that when you are out in the open, if even if let's say you hit a shot, you hit a body shot, and then you try to clean someone up with another body shot, at that point you're likely to be taking some flinch, from the incoming fire. So it's like even if your aim is really good, you might still miss because of the flinch mechanic. Whereas if you're
Absolutely.
going in and out behind cover, like you're sort of more in control of when you peek at that point and when you're able to be shot. So you can sort of use that peeker's advantage, as some people like to say in different games, to take that opportunity to hit the shot where you're sort of in control of when you're actually seen instead of being stuck out in the open.
Absolutely, yeah. So basically, like the way that Destiny works is it has like a camera angle that that favors peeking a cover from, peeking out on the left. So, like for example, if I don't know, let's find like a better angle. If I'm over here and I'm peeking out on the left side, I'll be able to see you before, like if you're using cover and peeking out on the right, and I'm peeking out on the left, I'll be able to see you before you can see me. So basically, like if you can, it's always nice to be able to take that angle where the cover is on your right hand side and the person that you're trying to shoot is on the left hand side.
Yeah, I remember talking. I think I was talking to you or one of my other friends about this during Bannerfall one time.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you remember that or if it was someone else, but anyway, we were talking about how like that that first fight that people love to take on Bannerfall at the top where they
up on the
slide
catwalk area,
on the
yeah.
catwalk, that silly fight.
Oh, it's so
So
silly.
it is so silly, but it's funny because I feel like I was thinking about like I win much more like more often when I peek like one side or the other, and I was thinking about it. I was like that actually perfectly corresponds to the peeking left versus peeking right in the way that your model looks around the corner. It made a lot of like it clicked for me when I thought about that. That so not any ever since then, anytime I have the opportunity to think about it, I always try to peek on the strong side as opposed to the weaker side.
Yeah, it's definitely an advantage. Like here, if you go like halfway into cover, like can
Mhm.
you see me
I
like right
can
can you get a headshot of me right now?
I could barely get you. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're like fully out of cover for me. So like like
Yeah.
your whole head is out there. So I mean, this might not be like the best perfect angle example, but like it's definitely holds true as a concept just overall in the
Mhm.
game. Um, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
just like another
interesting.
thing you can have in your arsenal and use to your advantage as a sniper.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the whole like slicing the pie analogy
Yes,
that's
I
used
am.
often? Okay, so just to briefly demonstrate that, do you want to walk over here? How about come over, stand next to this box? I'll just show what that means. So there's this concept I've talked about this in some of my other videos called slicing the pie, where basically the idea is that instead of just peeking this angle like this, where I'm just like I don't know, kind of running out willy nilly, like looking at everything, you systematically slice off the areas that you think someone might be, but you're not sure yet. So for example, a demo here, I'm gonna like slowly move my crosshair to the left as I'm peeking to the right in sort of an angle like this, right? So I basically what I'm doing is I'm clearing like this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle. Oh, there's a guy right there. But the whole idea of it basically is that you kind of turn your body in an arc, and you might not like do that exactly in game. It might instead be something like you clear this, and then you like slide out and do this in one motion, so that you're harder to hit. But the idea is basically that you minimize how much exposure you have into to getting hit while maximizing the chance that you'll only have to take on one enemy at a time as you clear each angle.
Yeah, that's definitely another important concept overall. And something I might add also is like this is actually a great example because like as you clear this area over here,
Hmm.
if you're able to move like right here, if you slide up like right here when you peek this other angle, then that area that you cleared, someone could be there. They're just not peeking at the time that you cleared it. So if you move over here, then okay, well they can't see you. So even like worst case scenario, if someone does peek that after you look away, they still can't shoot you. So like using that's just like another way to like use cover to your advantage, and like only peek like one area at a time.
Yeah, it's funny. There's sort of like a meta concept I'm like realizing as we're talking about this, that I think a lot of sniping is actually more about positioning and movement than it is about raw aim. Like raw aim, of course, is incredibly important. You need to be able to precisely click on the target, to hit your shot. But like raw aim alone will only get you so far. It really, a lot of it comes down to playing your angles really wisely and minimizing the chances that you're going to get hit while maximizing the chance that you'll actually see like engagements that are favorable to you, like taking only 1% at a time. And I think you see
Absolutely.
that in things like trials when you come across aimbots. Like, why is it that some aimbot teams are able to be beaten when they have 100% accuracy with their shots? Like, well, they probably don't have like good instincts when it comes to like playing their life, and so like really smart good teams can take advantage of that by playing better fundamentals, even if they don't have 100% accuracy because they don't have an aimbot themselves.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah. It's just like aiming is one part of it, but angle management and movement and awareness is like another massive part. If you are like lacking on either one, then you're not going to be like the best overall player.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to sniping is like different styles of aiming, and I feel like they all have like their merits in like different situations. But essentially, there's like the drag scope where you like move your crosshair like fairly rapidly towards the target and then like shoot when you think it's over them. Then there's the flick where it's mostly a thing for mouse and keyboard players where you just like move your mouse incredibly fast and you just shoot and like when you think it's on their head, right?
Yeah.
um, and then there's like lining up your shot where like you take a little bit extra time and make sure your shot is like actually on the target before you fire. So yeah, we just want to talk like kind of a bit about that and like the different styles and like how they're good in different situations and like which one you might want to use more often than others. And I think it also depends a lot on your input method.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this because I also have some thoughts, and I feel like, for example, drag scoping is like typically something that's most done on controller because it sort of takes advantage of the way that like aim assist combines with like reticle friction when you're flicking across someone. Whereas I think like the raw like flicking motion versus like I don't know, accurately trying to track someone's head and then click it are more like mouse centric things. But it is funny because I will get occasional like comments on my YouTube videos where I'm sniping and someone will say, "Oh man, I thought you played mouse and keyboard. You like are drag scoping." But it's like I think what it actually is that they're just watching like a flick where I just like happen to have like really good timing with where I chose to actually click the button instead of like stopping right on someone's head. I
Hmm.
sort of like clicked as I like went through them. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, as a controller player, I do actually take a lot of I take advantage a lot over the reticle friction that exists. And for anyone who may be unfamiliar, it's not going to work because we're on the same team right now. But essentially, if you're moving your crosshair and then you move it across an enemy, your crosshair will move a little bit slower while you're over the enemy. So basically, like if you are doing like this large like sweeping motion from one side of them to the other in order to like line up the shot. I mean, maybe lineup isn't the best word because they were talking about that in a different context. But in order to hit the shot, if you're moving it like in a large sweeping motion from one side of them to the other, it's really advantageous to do that on controller because it will be slower on their heads. So you have like a larger window to pull the trigger, and it will still count as a headshot.
Mhm.
So as a controller player, I try to take advantage of that a lot, and just I like to shoot. While my crosshair is moving like quite often. I very rarely actually take the time to like line up a direct shot.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I watch your gameplay, like you're very big on the drag scoping efficiency, which is interesting.
Yeah, I feel like it is important to mention though, like you don't like your goal is not to like do drag scoping. Like it should be always to like pre-aim so that you're directly on their head when you ADS, and like that's
Mhm.
that's the ideal scenario. Like if you're a little bit off, then like you can do like a small drag to their head. But like you never want to like just willy-nilly aim down sights and then drag like halfway across your screen in order to
Yeah,
like get to your target because like that just drastically
it's
decreases
just
your accuracy.
absolutely, it's very inefficient
Yeah.
way to aim. So when do you think about like I don't know, how do you make the decision, I guess, in the moment of going for more of like a drag scope like that versus actually sitting there and taking your time to like line up a shot? Like what goes through your mind when you're kind of weighing your options of how you're going to take on a situation like that?
Well, if I'm playing against another sniper and they're looking at me, I will never take the time to
Right.
like fully line up a shot because I'm probably gonna die. Um, I'd say I mostly will just try to take the shot as fast as I can and take as much advantage of that controller aim assist as I can. But when it comes to lining up a shot, most of the time that would just be like if I was looking at someone who was facing the other direction and primering my teammate or something like that, where I know I have a tiny bit of extra time, so I might use that extra quarter second or something, in order to just like increase the chances of me hitting it slightly. It's not like a huge difference, but you asked like when's the scenario where I might take a little bit of extra time, and that's when probably when I wasn't under an extreme amount of pressure to hit a shot right away.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting. One thing I watch when especially with good mouse and keyboard players, it's a little tougher, I think, to like take your time with it because flinch is just so painful on mouse and keyboard when it knocks your. I know it is for controller too, but like when it knocks your cursor around, it's very hard without the friction to like get back on target sometimes.
That's true.
But
Yeah.
there are certain players that I watch, like Sonic comes to mind. He used to always be incredibly good when I used to watch him a lot. At doing this, where like some players get very good at managing the recoil, where they'll like sort of click in between the recoil, so they'll like get flinched and then be able to like make a micro adjustment very quickly and still hit the shot, almost like
Hmm.
waiting for the cadence of if they're fighting a hand cannon, for example. You can kind of get used to like how much time you have in between shots and be able to hit that. And that's one thing I think it's tougher when you're playing like a pulse rifle or something because it's much harder to time things like that since you're getting kind of flinched in a more like irregular feeling pattern. But it's kind of interesting. It's a skill gap I think that exists that a lot not a lot of players talk about is the ability to sort of like make those micro adjustments in between flinch and still hit a shot.
Yeah, I feel like it also has a lot to do with timing because, if you know the gun you're fighting, like say, for example, you're fighting against someone who's shooting you with a steady hand, which is like a 120 hand cannon, you want to like take your shot right before they shoot their next shot, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like if you hit me once, I'm going to want to wait until right before you shoot the second shot. And so that way I have like, the least amount of flinch and the most accuracy possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. So speaking of our mouse and keyboard versus controller um, you know, debate of how each works. I okay, I've always felt like each of them have sort of advantages and disadvantages, and like I think that like at the higher levels, a lot of teams tend to give the sniper to the controller player because it's sort of it's controller players are able to take a lot of advantage of that reticle friction and everything, and it's a little harder for them to shotgun at like a super high level because of the restrictions when it comes to moving. So the movement's not quite as like rapid in terms of being able to like make very fast adjustments from side to side because you can't turn that fast even at like maximum sensitivity.
Hmm.
But I feel like with controllers, like whenever, for example, if we're doing like scrims with friends, I feel like if I'm like sniping on the other team and I don't pick you, and my teammates are out like in the open, it's like duck hunting season for you, where I'm like pretty sure that you're gonna snipe at least one, if not two or three of us, um, when you're not beaten. However, with mouse and keyboard, I feel like because there's like this little window where maybe you can react slightly faster with it because of like so the movement where you can do things that are just like slightly faster because you don't have like to take that time to like adjust the stick. Or I feel like there's sometimes like a little window where you can take advantage of it and get a pick, but you have to be like super super fast with it. And if your window for missing is like very very small, and if you do miss, you just gotta get right out of there. But it's just something that I've kind of noticed when we've played. Like I feel like if you're art now this again goes back to the first part. This is assuming that you're not already perfectly pre-aiming at where I'm stepping into. If that's the
Hmm.
case, then it's just you're done. But like I'm thinking more of a situation where like maybe you're not like perfectly pre-aimed. Like there's that uh little bit of a window where I think a mouse and keyboard player can get in there and take a quick shot. But in a straight up like duel with like a controller player and a mouse and keyboard player are equally skilled and they're both holding like a particular angle, I feel like it's very difficult to beat a good controller player. Like it's very very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I mean, I feel like it really depends. Like, it's kind of like rare to have a situation where there's like an equally skilled mouse and keyboard and equally skilled controller player on Sniper, and it's also kind of like hard to quantify that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
very true.
but yeah, I mean, when you were talking earlier about like me sniping your teammates or whatever. And I feel like that has a lot to do with like I can take a shot and then just get back to cover and then keep coming back out.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's like a really effective way, as long as you like don't hit a headshot on me with a hand cannon or something that does 90 damage. That's probably going to make me want to go to cover and regenerate. But if I can just like keep peek shotting, that's like a really huge advantage. When it comes to just picking off people that don't have snipers, because there's really no risk. Like unless I get team shot perfectly, me peeking this and sniping someone using a primary, who has a shotgun where you are, that's just like there's literally no risk. So I can just do that all day.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but you mentioned like a sniper and a controller are equally skilled. I'm not really sure. I feel like I feel like controllers like do have a certain type of advantage when it comes to just having the reticle friction, like we were talking about earlier. But at the same time, like it I can't like aim quite as fast. I mean, it really depends on sensitivity as well. But like I play on like a lower sensitivity. So if I have to make like a big correction, especially if we're at like close range, like if I'm aiming down here and you're aiming up here, you can correct much faster than I can. Like it's gonna take me like a full half second to get from like aiming at the bottom of this box to aiming like way over where you are.
Mhm.
So I'd say especially at close range, MK does have that advantage, but maybe at longer ranges, because of that friction, it's easier for a controller player.
Yeah, I think that's like a pretty reasonable take on it. One of the other things that's interesting is that with mouse and keyboard, you're able like your base movement, not just your movement in terms of like your actual walking around, but your ability to move your screen quickly. As in, like if someone jumps over you, you're able to do a 180 like instantaneously. Versus controller, you have to, like the maximum speed that you can do it is if you peg your stick all the way to the side at 10 sensitivity, like it's still not that fast versus like a mouse and keyboard is nearly instantaneous with how fast you can flick your mouse from side to side. So I feel like that's one disadvantage that controller snipers have, and that's one way if you know someone is a controller sniper, if you're able to get close to them like that and like jump over their head, for example, or jump side to side, you can punish that movement. I know you have a trick that you shared with me like when we talked a while ago that you tend to use your hunter dodge to sort of do
Yeah.
a like instantaneous 180, which is really smart. Um, but that's maybe we can talk about that for a minute, actually.
Yeah, so like I play on a low sensitivity, like compared to a lot of other controller snipers and just controller players in general. So like this is me just like turning around, like it's like pretty slow compared to someone on mouse and keyboard. So I totally agree. Like when it comes to like turning around, it can be quite a lot slower. And if someone is in my face, like being able to correct, even when it just comes to like shooting my hand cannon or whatever primer I may be using, I feel like that is definitely a good point that you bring up. But about the hunter dodge, you also mentioned that that is something that I crutch like quite a lot. Like I don't like to use the word crutch, but I take like so much advantage over like the fact that you can just instantly change directions or do a 180 or literally any direction you want. So basically what I do if I'm like running this way and I want to turn around, I just dodge backward and then turn my controller as I'm dodging. So like I'm traveling backwards, but my camera is still facing forward until I'm like almost done with the animation. And that point, and by that point, I'm actually turned around so that I can start running in the other direction. So I feel like using the hunter dodge, if you're on controller on a somewhat low sensitivity or even on 10 sensitivity, it's an easy way to like get out of that, get out of a bad situation really
Yeah.
fast. So yeah, that's a way to like kind of negate the disadvantage of not being able to 180, but at the same time, it's like it doesn't work on warlocks and titans, and also like you don't always have your dodge. So
Yeah, it's pretty limited to fast dodging hunters. Speaking of that, what are your thoughts on controller sensitivity for sniping? I know you said you play lower, and then there's quite a few people who play a little higher. Do you have thoughts on like what the best quote unquote sensitivity is? Are there ranges that you think are competitive or people should stay out of? Or what are your thoughts on that?
personally, I play on a 4 sensitivity, and that's basically the lowest you'll ever see when it comes to just like sniping at a high level. Most people play like a little bit higher than that, even up to 10. So I'd say just basically anything above 4 or at 4 in my case, it can be competitive, and it really just depends on your personal preference. And I like it really depends on like your personal preference, like I said, because when you're aiming, You either want to do like the drag scope, like we were talking about earlier, and it depends on how much you want to move your thumbstick. When I'm aiming, I like to move my thumbstick like all the way to the edge if I'm doing like a drag scope. So that's why I play a lower sensitivity because, if you're on 10 and you put your thumbstick like on maximum throttle, you're gonna be like flying around. But for me, it's just like it's not a super rapid speed, so I can still like control it and be precise with it. Um, so that's when I say it comes to personal preference. And I
Yeah,
also play a somewhat lower FOV. So I feel like that also has an impact
that's
on
interesting.
what
What
sensitivity you
FOV do you play
choose.
at?
I've changed it a lot actually over like the past year, but recently I've been playing on an 80.
80. Oh wow. Okay, so that's quite a bit. That's what pretty close to console, right? If you said like,
Yeah, I feel like console is like 73 or something, like low
okay,
70s.
yeah,
So
yeah, interesting.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like a
that's
bit higher than console.
that's funny. I'm like at the complete opposite end of the spectrum where I play max 105, which I think is actually like 100 and 100.8 or something for
Yeah,
with the way the game's programmed. But anyway, I play max FOV on mouse and keyboard, which basically just gives you the widest FOV possible to see side to side, which is a pretty big advantage in my eyes, just because you can have better peripheral vision. But
it
um,
is true. It is true. That's something that I do have to give up with the playstyle that I have.
yeah,
So
that's interesting. So I have sort of like similar comments, I guess, for mouse and keyboard. I play currently at 800 DPI and 5 cents, which, from everything I can tell from talking to other really good players and sweat players in tournaments and whatever, seems to be more or less middle of the road for kind of what is considered a good reasonable sensitivity. That works out to 34 centimeters per 360, meaning if I turn my mouse at hip fire, it takes 34 centimeters to make a full rotation. So that's kind of what I use now for basically every game I play. It's a little faster than I used to play. I used to play a little slower. But what I've found is that it helps to be just a little bit more reactive, where if there's like a really fast moving Dawn Blade, it takes a little bit less energy for me to like trace them quickly. But you do potentially give up a little bit of control when you go higher sensitivity. But when I say higher sense, the thing is, like, I still play at what's considered, I'd say, a medium to low sensitivity overall. And I forget exactly what the starting sense is when you launch Destiny for the first time, but it's like something like 15 or 30, or I'm not really sure. It's very high in comparison. And I think one of the biggest tips that I tend to give players when they're asking me for tips on how to snipe better on mouse and keyboard is to, like, first of all, look at your sensitivity, because if you're a brand new player, it's very likely that your equivalent CM per 360 is like, I don't know, like 5 centimeters to turn it a full 360, or like 10, or like, many multiples faster than like myself or like many good players tend to play at. And the reality is that when you're playing at such a fast sensitivity, there are certain players who can control that. But it's much more difficult. And you have to develop like incredibly good mouse and finger control in order to do that. So it's one of the tips I usually give people is to find a somewhat reasonable sensitivity range that's kind of like similar to what other good players use, and then kind of work from there to find your personal preference. But if your sensitivity is 10 times faster than like pretty much any like quote unquote good player, it's probably going to be a lot more difficult for you to make those very small adjustments accurately and hit your shots.
yeah, I totally agree. And if I could, I'd just like to elaborate a little bit more on controller
Yeah.
sensitivity. It also depends on like what type of controller you're using because I have a controller that has like pretty low stick tension, and a lot of people see that as like a bad thing. But I mean, I'm honestly fine with it. But it's just like another thing that you need to take into consideration. Um, and then also when it comes to like having a really high or a really low sensitivity, they come with different advantages and disadvantages. Like for example, if you're on like a really high sensitivity and you're trying to shoot someone who's really far away. Like I take an example on like Midtown, there's this like really long lane from like the heavy ammo all the way back to the spawn.
Hmm.
And like if you're trying to snipe someone who's in the spawn and you're on a high sensitivity, you're gonna like it's gonna be difficult to like do a drag scope because you'll probably overshoot them if you
You'd
try
run right
moving your
past them.
crosshair at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're on a lower sensitivity, then it's easier to like actually like still move your crosshair without overshooting them. And then the flip side of that is like if there's a Dawn Blade and I'm trying to shoot them and they're moving like super fast and like fairly near to me, like the only chance I have of sniping a Dawn Blade is if I have like pretty good crosshair placement. Like whenever I hear a Dawn Blade pop, I just start aiming like in the
Yeah.
sky and
Yeah.
like I just hope that they fly in, you know? And obviously I'm
Absolutely.
near cover so I can get away if they aren't where I predict and they throw a sword, I can just dodge to cover. But like if you're on a different sensitivity, it might be easier to correct for that rapid movement of a dawn blade.
Yeah. One other thing I guess would be interesting to chat about briefly is like helpful things like mods, for example, that you can add to your armor to improve automatically at sniping. Like, do you use like targeting mods and stuff much, or are you don't crutch on those?
I'm a big fan of targeting mods.
Okay, I am too.
I used to run one like a few weeks ago. This is like this is all after the sniper aim
Mhm.
assist changes. But recently I've been putting on two sniper targeting mods on my head, my
Yeah,
headpiece, and I found that that's actually like, I mean, I know there are diminishing returns, but I found it's actually pretty helpful.
I'm the same actually. I if I can fit two in like my build, I will do it because I really do notice a difference from 0 to 1 to 2. Especially
Hmm.
with things like I remember when I first was trying to hit shots with Cloud Strike. Yeah, I just had like just hand cannon targeting on, and I was like I felt like man I'm like not hitting anything right now. And then I put on one and it started working, and then I put on two and I was like hitting every shot, and I was like wow okay this is actually it's pretty noticeable. But it's just interesting because I feel like there's this, I don't know, thought that like targeting mods, especially for mouse and keyboard players, don't matter for some reason. But in personal experience, I feel like they certainly help quite a bit. And
Absolutely.
I feel like I notice that extra little aim assist quite a bit. Because the thing is, like, even if you're an insanely good player with really good aim, like if it's more generous, that means that you can just take a little bit less time to be super precise with your aim, and that means you can react effectively a little bit quicker, and you just have more margin for error. And like the thing is, Destiny is a game with really fast, erratic movement, so any advantage that you can give yourself is I think worth taking.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like the argument is like, oh yeah, you're only getting one form of aim assist in the form of bullet magnetism instead of also getting the you know, reticle friction. But I feel like it's still like a huge thing to pay attention to, even on no matter what input device you're on, it still matters.
Yeah,
And another thing
absolutely.
to remember is like prior to Beyond Light, these mods were like nowhere near as good. Like they're now equal to the enhanced version from
Yeah,
before.
it's like having
So
double enhanced now.
having double enhanced is insane. Like I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like the cost was 6
I
on the
think it was
enhanced
6 before.
targeting.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah, so
sure,
like it
but I
was
think it was
literally
6.
impossible to run two enhanced targeting.
Mhm.
And now that's possible. So I feel like that's actually like a pretty significant thing in order to like partially negate the aim assist nerf to low zoom snipers.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. What about targeting or sorry, unflinching mods like on your chest? Do you find those helpful?
I find them pretty helpful, but again, it's like kind of hard to quantify unflinching, and like I,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have tried to do like tests and videos and stuff, but it's like it's really hard to like tell how much they're actually doing. But I still run them. I normally just run one unflinching sniper, and then I just have like a recovery mod, and then like right now the hand cannon mod is really cheap, so I just run
Mhm.
that as well. Unflinching hand cannon, that is. So
Yeah, I've had
yeah,
kind of
I
a
mean.
similar approach with that because I feel like it. I don't know. Anecdotally, I do feel like it makes a difference. Like if I have 0, I feel like I get flinched a lot more. And then if I throw 2 on there, I feel like I can notice the flinches a lot less. But you're also the thing is sniper mods are really expensive. Like they're 5 energy I think for both
Mhm.
currently for the unflinching and for the targeting ones. So like
Yeah,
it's just really you're investing a lot into that. And with the 120s being so strong for hand cannons right now, it's nice to have things like high energy fire to be able to potentially two tap if you get charged with light, or like
true.
all the different other targeting stuff and scavengers and whatnot. So it's like it's pretty expensive sometimes to invest so heavily. But I do personally feel like if I can like I think ideally I'd like to go with 2 of the sniper targeting mods on my helmet and then 1 of the unflinching. I feel like that's like a pretty reasonable way to do it. And sometimes I'll just go with 1 and 1. But if I can work it into the build without sacrificing too much elsewhere, I really do think that having 2 is worth it.
Yeah, I sacrifice like recovery on my build now to run double targeting because
Mhm.
like it improves target acquisition, accuracy, and aim down sight speed. So I feel like it just has so many benefits that like you have to take that into account. Like especially if you're using your sniper a decent amount, it's worth it in my opinion to sacrifice 10 recovery for that.
Yeah, absolutely. What about scavenger mods? What do you typically do with that?
I normally run double scavenger just so I can have like as much sniper ammo as possible. But if you're someone who might main your primary a little bit more, then you might want to, run like if you're on a controller traction, or you might want to run, some other mod on your boots, or you put that energy towards like a charge with light or something like that. Um, but in trials and like just in general, I tend to get about half my kills with sniper, or sometimes more than that. So I do invest in having the double scavenger.
Yeah. I also tend to do double for sniper if I can, again, if I can afford it. Sometimes it's difficult with different things that you want to work into a build. But I feel like there's a lot of value with two for sniper. Whereas like with shotgun, I typically only do one. Sometimes not even any, but most of the time I'll just do one. Because the thing is, when you shotgun someone, you kill them with a shotgun, and then you pick up the special ammo like automatically by rolling over
Yeah.
them. Whereas with a sniper, it's often from distance, so it's like you might get like two sniper kills, but then the ammo is like 50 meters from you, so you have to go all the way over and get it, and that means that you're maybe missing out on another free killer or whatnot. So I personally feel like it's worth it to run double again if you can fit it into your build.
True, yeah. What is your opinion on the targeting adjuster mod on like a weapon?
So it's not something that I've run too much on snipers, mostly because I really do value having Icarus, so that if like it's not like I'm sitting there trying to go for jump snipes all the time. But the thing is, I am a hunter and I like to be in the air a lot. It's like my
Yep.
natural habitat. So I find that like if I'm in the air, I like to have the chance that I'll actually hit the shot, more often because of the improved inner accuracy. And I do go for a lot of things like for example, like whenever it's trials on javelin, I will go for that little shot where you like spawn and jump over the little mid like
Oh
jump
yeah,
up
I know what
area.
you're
Like I
talking about.
love going for little shots like that. So I personally value Icarus more than targeting adjuster. Some people I know say that targeting adjuster doesn't matter or doesn't work on snipers for mouse and keyboard. I don't know if that's to be true or not. I haven't really tested it enough to like feel confident one way or another. And I think it's only I guess +5, so it's a pretty that's what people say. So it's tough to
Yeah,
know.
according to like Light GG and all those websites, it's like
Yeah.
+5 aim assist. So I mean, do with that information what you will. But I mean, I feel like it does something for MNK. In
Yeah,
my
it's I mean
opinion.
I would think that it would but again, it's not something I've extensively tested, and that for
Yeah,
me
same.
I would almost always rather have Icarus just because that's one area where I feel like the ability to have the inner accuracy is personally more valuable because I like to jump up in the air a lot.
Yeah, I say it also depends on like your build because in trials sometimes I run spectral blades and I like to take advantage of the flawless execution by crouching.
Mhm.
So when I'm running a build like that, I tend to be a lot more grounded. So probably not going to be taking a whole bunch of jump shots. So in that case, I would run the targeting adjuster.
Yeah, interesting. What do you typically go targeting like most of the time? Do you think, or you
I'd
kind of
say
do whatever
yeah,
is?
more often than not, but especially like if I'm just trying to have fun and quick play and like take a bunch of jump shots, then I will switch
Yeah,
to Icarus. And
makes sense.
I don't know, I'd probably say like 70% of the time I use targeting
What
adjuster.
about? Do you think there's like any reason to use the other mods? Like one of I've always like kind of wished that I could run like if for example if Icarus ever did move over to be like an armor mod or something, I think I would like to test out like the radar tuner one just to, like where you get your radar back really quickly. Like I
Yeah.
always thought that was kind of cool, but it's just like okay, I'm not going to use it over Icarus, and I'm probably not going to use it over like a targeting adjuster either. So it's a pretty tough one to invest in for me, but I kind of like wish that there was more reason to go with different things like that.
Yeah, I mean there's like the radar booster and the radar tuner.
Yeah,
And I feel like both of them are just like not that great. I mean, I think
yeah.
they'd probably have to get buffed in order to warrant running them over the other mods. Something that I do run on some snipers in quick play is the backup mag, just so that I have more shots in my
Yeah,
sniper. It's always helpful if you're just trying to like chain kills, but also it's just like you have to reload less often. It's always nice, and you can take more shots without reloading.
yeah,
So that's something I run in quick play, but I wouldn't say it's worth it at all for 3v3s or trials or sweats or anything like that.
yeah. That makes sense. That's kind of my thoughts on that as well. Definitely don't think. I guess the one exception is potentially on like a high impact sniper where you only have like 3 bullets. I could
True,
see
yeah.
more argument for running it there, but even still, I feel like I'd probably run Icarus most of the time. And most of the snipers I really use are more like in the 4 to 5 bullet range, so it's
Yeah, and
not
also
something I've had to deal with that much.
if you're on Hunter, you can dodge to reload, so it just
Yeah,
it makes the value of that go down as well because it's like, well, what's the big deal about reloading if you just dodge and boom, you have all your
a-
ammo back,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one final question I had for you, because this is something that I often tell people, and I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on this. I've got this question a lot. Like, does it make sense to like use a whole bunch of different loadouts all the time so that you're sort of like, well versed with everything, or to like spend a lot of time with like a few loadouts to be like, to become better? And my answer usually is that I personally think it makes more sense to spend a lot of your time with a small amount of loadouts so that you become really like adept at using that particular, for example, like one sniper, or maybe like 1 to 3 snipers that you actually can practice with, as opposed to just like, I don't know, trying to become good with like 15 different snipers, I guess. So I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, personally, I mean, I'd say if you're trying to be like super competitive and like win a tournament or something, you definitely want to stick with one loadout so that you can just master it and become as comfortable and like have as much muscle memory as you possibly can. But if you're someone who's just like playing for fun, or if you're just, trying to improve, but you're not taking it like uber seriously, I'd say you might want to have like a main loadout, but at the same time, you should still experiment and try out some other things, both to get perspective and also just to try out what the game has to offer. Because I feel like if you use Beloved for 2 years straight, like you're really not experiencing Destiny like as its fullest amount. Like I use basically every single sniper in the game. I've killed hundreds of people in the Crucible with it. Like
Yeah.
I think I checked just out of curiosity the other day, and I have like over 50,000 snipes in the Crucible. So like
Wow.
I've used like every single sniper in the game, like a decent amount. So
Mhm.
I'd say like just experimenting and just like trying to have fun with like different loadouts is definitely something I'd recommend. But at the same time, I still have like a select few guns that I'm the most comfortable with and that I would use in trials. But again, in quick play, you should probably experiment and see what the game has to offer. But also it does give you a perspective. Like if you always snipe, you're not going to know what it's like to shotgun. And I mean, I'm kind of like that. Like I don't shotgun very often, but I find that when I do shotgun, I realize like, well, how am I dying? Like how did this sniper counter me? And then I can also take that back and apply that to my own gameplay in order to counter that playstyle better next time I
Yeah,
face someone.
that makes a lot of sense. That's a good approach. Cool. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it.
Awesome. I feel like we did a pretty good job covering that topic. It'll be interesting to see what people have to say in the comments. I think I feel like we did a pretty decent job of covering both the benefits and drawbacks of mouse and keyboard, but also just kind of an overall good view of sniping. So
Awesome.
where can people find you on the internet if they want to find your videos and YouTube and streams and whatnot?
So I'm trying to grow on YouTube. I'm making like a bunch of different videos on different subjects, but mostly PvP and Destiny 2. But you can find me there, youtube.com/ShadowDestiny. And then I also have twitch.tv/ShadowDestiny. I stream there occasionally. Sometimes we do trials and just quick play, have fun, chat with viewers. It's always a good way to connect to the audience. And then I also have Instagram and Twitter, and my handle there is LTZShadow.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, dude. I appreciate it. It's a very fun episode. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy it.
Absolutely, dude. It was great talking to you and going over some of these tips.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I'll have a good one. Wow, I hope you guys really enjoyed that one. Shadow is such a great player, and I love hearing more about how he thinks about the game, especially as he's wiping entire teams with his sniper rifle. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a thumbs up rating, and also head over to Shadow's channel and leave a comment on his most recent video, letting him know that you appreciated him spending a little bit of time with us to share his knowledge. If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, please be sure to do so. I have a ton of awesome videos coming your way soon, and I can't wait to share them with you. I stream each week over on Twitch. You can catch me live at twitch.tv/pattycakespc. We also have an amazing community Discord server that you can join with over 7,000 members. The link to join is discord.gg/pattycakes. That's all for now. Catch you guys next time.